Seats, please. Yes, first of all, I'll introduce myself to you. My name is Roger Craig, and I'm the president of the St. George North Constituency branch. I would take this opportunity to welcome each and everyone here this evening at the Cuthbert Primary School, here in the beautiful constituency of St. George North. Um, we have a packed agenda for you. There are some 3, 4, or 4 speakers, so I will not take up much of your time. And at this point in time, I'll hand over to our MP, who will make some brief remarks. Thank you.
All right, good evening to everyone. Now, the president is being very careful to say that I will make some brief remarks. So I hear the subtlety in that. So I just want to join his voice in welcoming you here. Now, when you look at the agenda that we have for you, you'll recognize that there are 3 main areas of focus for this evening. We are looking at something that has been very topical, which is a new act that was passed in Parliament just about a month ago now, just under a month ago, and that is the Labor Clauses Concessions Act, and we have Senator Gregory Nichols here with us, who will spend some time talking about that and will provide opportunity, I'm sure, to allow any of you who have questions on it to do so. And then on Thursdays, and in between Thursdays is when we are at the branch and we are seeing people from the constituency, and that we, being myself, supported by our liaison officer, Paul Bentham, and the constituency assistant, Nicolette Bedford. When we are in there on Thursday evenings, most of the issues that come into the constituency office relate to 2 things. Besides jobs, that which is number 1, we have people reaching out for housing and people who are interested in social care options, specifically channeled through the Ministry of People Empowerment. So this evening as well, we have the respective ministers for housing and people empowerment who will be joining us, and you get the opportunity not only to hear from the responses from your parliamentary representative on what can be done or what is on stream, but you have the opportunity to speak with them live and direct. This is not a typical meeting where we are reporting to you on what we have been doing, but of course, we are not limiting you to the 3 areas here. If there are any burning issues or problems or concerns that you want us to be made aware of, this is also your opportunity as a branch of St. George North constituency. This is the first meeting that we have come up this side, and this is in response to the people. We have heard complaints, man, we're not always holding the meetings down in St. George Secondary School and St. George Primary School. So this evening we are happy to be here at Cuthbert Moor, close to the people of Bridgecourt, Market Hill, Sweet Vale, St. Helens, and all the surrounding areas, Applewood. So we are glad to be closer to you. We know that a number of you knew that the meeting was streaming this evening, and so you may have opted to stay at home, but we expect this meeting to be a very informative one, and one where everyone who has come here to be a part of it can leave feeling uplifted, confident not only in the progress that we are making in St. George North, but confident in the progress that we are making in the Barbados Labour Party-led government. A government that I believe is a government for the times that we are in. More from the other speakers, less from me right now. We'll talk at some point before the meeting ends, I'm sure.
Okay, at this time, we won't go into any other details, and I'll hand over the meeting to the moderators. Our comrade Jessica Odell Burrell and comrade Shane Archer. Thank you.
Good evening, comrades. It is always a thrill when a family gathers. That's what we're doing this evening. You know, we get real busy election time, we're out in the street and we each in our own boxes and so on. But this is the evening where as a family, we come and hear, ask our questions to those who have been invited to speak, and Tony already spoke about the specific areas, but without limitation to the things that you want to hear more about or to speak about, or any ideas, because we live in this constituency, you may care to bring to the fore. I'm delighted to share. I would be the old guard, so to speak. I share the space with, let's welcome Minister Kirk Humphrey. Welcome, Minister. Yeah. I share the moderating space this afternoon with a young Turk, Shane Archer, who needs no introduction. Whoop, whoop. And together, once the various presentations have been made, if there's a burning question, we feel it would be wise to take it by section. If there are none, we'll proceed right to the end and take all the questions at the end. Shane, before we introduce the first speaker, do you have something to add?
Well, welcome to the Minister of Housing, the Honorable Member for St. George South. Yeah, and just adding a few words, in addition to what Jessica said, it's great to see a full house here at Cuthbert Moore, full of Barbados Labour Party supporters, to hear the good word of our government. So with no further ado, I'll hand over to Jessica, who would introduce our first speaker of the evening.
Thank you very much, Co-Chair. Tony already made reference. First up for the batting, and how well he can bat. If we follow the debates in the House of Assembly, I would say that the BLP got a team all told, do we? Yeah. And so, first to present this afternoon is the Honourable Kirk Humphrey. I see a couple of his people with us this evening. Welcome to St. George North. And Minister, we spoke earlier, so we know the areas you will look at are matters dealing with people empowerment and elder care. And at the end of your presentation, there may be some questions. Minister, over to you.
Thank you very much, Jessica. A very special good afternoon to all. A very special good afternoon to the head table, my people. A very special good afternoon to your MP. Please give her a round of applause, please. A very special good afternoon to my people here from St. Michael's South. And yeah, give them a round of applause. It is a pleasure to be here. I am told I don't have a lot of time, so I will try not to waste any of it. But to say, first of all, I just realized that Clee, who lives right there, is actually my aunt. And so I just met some more family. My father's family, Duncan Fields, is from down that side. I have a lot of family in this particular constituency. And I got to know a lot of them when I was canvassing for you in the by-election.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I say all that to say that I feel like I'm at home here. And I wonder if St. George North is aware that they have an excellent, excellent representative in Tony Moore. And I also wonder if St. George North is aware that people have deliberately targeted Tony just to be able to make sure that Tony does not do what she is supposed to do as a representative and as a leader of the union movement in Barbados. And that the fact that the Barbados Labour Party and the union has always had a relationship, I'm sure you know that already. And that when that union relationship was with the Democratic Labour Party, there was no problem. They were fine, and it was a man. They were okay with it. But when the union relationship is with the Barbados Labour Party, where it came from in the first place, where it came from in the first place, they now have a problem with it, which tells me that they're hypocritical. And if you look at the current model of the Democratic Labour Party, all you see over and over is hypocrisy on top of hypocrisy on top of hypocrisy. Before I tell you about my ministry very quickly, I was listening to, you know they got 2 leaders, so you gotta be careful now. 100. I was talking though I was listening to the president of the party recently, and he was expressing some opinion now about, first of all, about our social programming, and that the $600 that we gave to persons during COVID was not enough. It couldn't do anything. And that his proposal was that we would do what is called like a universal basic income. Everybody gets something. So if you imagine Barbados has 270,000 persons, and you give each of those persons 600 enough, so let's say you give each person $1,000, because this is his proposal. I want you to understand the idiocy of this thing. That is $270 million. Now, my ministry, as you heard from the opposition leader, when he was doing his thing, gets $104 million. By the way, that's the most money that this government, any government in the history of Barbados has put towards social care. But $270 million alone in grants. It has nothing to do with how they're going to raise the money, how they're going to pay for the other things associated with it. Just $270 million. That's to trap people. But you understand that there is no way that they could do it. Even if you reduce it, Gregory, to $600, that's $162 million. Where are they going to get the money from? The same man getting lambasted the UN. UN was the worst thing. Let the UN say one thing about Barbados that is slightly not the greatest. UN said. This party, this Democratic Labour Party has no principles. They don't believe in anything. They're doing anything to try to win the government. That is why now they would try to tell you, you would have heard, that this party has done nothing for poor people. This government has done nothing for poor people. I don't know if you also want to remind Ralph of the things we did in the market. Just a little hint of the things we would have done specifically during the course of the few years we were in power. But I want to talk to you today very quickly in relation to the amalgamation that we're doing and why we're doing it, and in relation to the elderly and the programs that we're doing for the elderly. You might have heard me say before that we are amalgamating our social services sector. We're bringing together welfare, child care board, national assistance board, and the National Disabilities Unit to form a family services authority. Now that would allow us to serve people a lot better. And I know in St. George North there have been some concerns about service. And trust me, every time somebody complains to Tony, I get a WhatsApp, I get a call, I get a stinking look from across the aisle because she sits the opposite to me. So I understand that there's some concern. So the reason that we have to amalgamate the social services and to be able to do it effectively is so that we can serve you better. And by doing that, we're going to have now all these agencies. When you walk into a social service agency now, instead of having to go to child care board if it's a child issue, disabilities if it's a disabilities issue, welfare if you just need a little help. When you go to one agency, and the plan is to have them across Barbados scattered. So you don't have to leave home and go to town. You go to one place, and you get access to all these services. Nobody knows why you're walking in. The officers now have to ask you, how can I help? We've been doing a lot of work on training, how to make sure that our people see persons who come in as clients. We train them up so that when you come in now, they're supposed to ask you about your family. Because the core of the Barbadian problem is family. At the end of the day, if we can get the family to work, then we would have done something. And that is why we're trying to create this family services unit. You know, the Dems had a ministry for family. And all they did was a whole set of papers and nothing to do with the improvement of family. When we are done, and I assure you that that will be done this year, we would have created a unit that the government has been talking about. Now, when I was a director in the government in 2007, 6, when I was manager in the government of Child Care Board in 2002, we were talking about these things. We're finally being able to deliver because this is a government that delivers. We could list 1, 2, 3, 4, a number of things that we would have done. Look, you will hear the Democratic Labour Party talking about how much they care about persons with disabilities. But where's the legislation? Where's the policy? Nothing. It's this Barbados Labour Party that just finished a policy. It is this Labour Party that will bring legislation to the Parliament in Barbados this year. You would hear them talking about elderly. How much, you got to do this for the elderly. Where's the policy? Where's the legislation? Nothing. Again, it is this Barbados Labour Party that has already brought the policy. The legislation is coming again to Parliament this year. They're talking about children. Where's the policy? Where's the legislation? Again, we've already started that debate in relation to children. Let me tell you, that legislation has been sidetracked. People are talking about all kinds of things except what's the basis of that legislation. Do you not think that children in this country deserve to be protected? Now, this is a serious question, you know, because that's fundamentally what it comes down to. Do you not think that the children of this country deserve to be protected? And see, they're talking about it, and we are doing something about it, and then they're arguing and marching about things that are not even in the bill. None of the things that they're concerned about are mentioned in the bill. So it tells me that they're just deciding that they just want to fight for fighting's sake. The Prime Minister always says we have to stay focused, stay the course, and deliver for the people of this country. I know that by the end of this year, and surely by the end of our term, this government would have done more for people in this country than any other government as it relates to the social services. That is a fact, because the child care legislation that guides the country is 120 years old. Now, how could you feel comfortable in 2024 being guided by legislation from the 1900s? Makes no sense at all. And that is why we have to be able to make some changes to the legislation, and that is why we have to do so in a way that makes sense. As it relates to elderly, we've done a policy that speaks in great detail about why it is that we need to be able to take care of our elderly. The latest census report tells us that 1 in every 4 Barbadians now is already over 60. 1 in 5 over 65. On the trajectory that we are going, the average Barbadian in the next, by 2050, will be 60 plus. You imagine what a country will look like when the average person in that country is 60 years old. You think about that. So every time we start talking about elderly and why we need to do things for seniors and aging, they're making it sound like we're fighting against young people. We don't want to do it. It's a nonsense. But the truth is that this country is aging. For the most part, you look at any crowd in Barbados now, for the most part, you will see persons above a certain age, because that is where our country has gone. We have to do things for our older population. It presents us with two things. You know, during the debate, the opposition leader did say one thing that was true, because he mentioned that perhaps, you know, you could give social services more money, maybe. What he did say, however, because, you know, they can't say two smart things in a row, what he did say was that you would have to cut the Prime Minister's budget to be able to do it. And now they're in town marching up and down about the Prime Minister's budget, although we went through great lengths to explain that that budget is made up of cadets, UDC, RDC, culture. I mean, we went through all of them. It's not like the Prime Minister has $168 million. All of these many departments that are under the Prime Minister need the money. But they're saying now that we have to cut it to make it useful. My belief, right? Cut it in half, he said. My vision is that it would be a nice, the day would be nice when we don't need so much money, because everybody is working, or the person's families are taking care of them. The fact that you need a large state budget to continue to monitor for persons who are in need tells us that we need to be able to find ways for people to eat and earn for themselves. I call it inclusive prosperity, so that when the country grows, everybody grows with it. That is what we need. The other thing is that you have to be very careful of is that some people are determining that they want to be in leadership, but have also determined that they will not give you an idea of any of their ideas. So you kind of taking a chance now. You're risking. This is a 3-card man, because this is a risk. And you're to go and bet now on this person here now who is a 3-card man in front of your face. Ask him what the plans are. What do you plan? So they've said very clearly, he ain't giving us no plans. Fair enough. Okay. You don't want to give us any plans? That's a matter for you. All right. So now you've determined that you're not giving any plans. So they've also said, if the Labour Party calls them to meetings to discuss our plans, they may come in neither. So they may come in to lend to the country's development, and they may put in forward a single idea for the country's development, but they want to come back into leadership because they feel people can say Kadir. So they want a Kadir kind of leadership. Now they've all determined that we should now look at Mia Motley as a dictator. This is what they feel they can do. I don't know if you all can remember in 2007, 2008, the Diamonds had a full-page ad of Owen Arthur dressed up like Castro. You all remember? This big thing, he's a dictator too. So don't get tied up. This is the same strategy. This is a one-trick pony, this Democratic Labour Party. So they know Mia Motley now, they're doing to Mia what they attempted to do to Owen Arthur. That Mia is a dictator now, and she's to be feared. But we know in this country, we've always praised our leadership. We praise Errol Barrow. All roads led to Errol Barrow. but it wasn't a problem for Errol Barrow. We praised Tom Adams. If we go back, we praised Grant Lee Adams. We praised Owen. If Thompson had lived longer, because they demonstrate to praise him, even though they praised Thompson. Because strong leadership has made Barbados great. Since when has that been a problem? But because it's Mia now, everything is a problem. So now Mia is to be a dictator, the way they defined Owen Arthur, because it worked then. But we have to say, as members of the Barbados Labour Party, that we will support our leader, that she's been an outstanding leader for this country. She has led the cabinet well, and she has led the cabinet fairly. The last thing I will mention before I go into questions, because I know they give me 20 minutes, but the last thing that I will mention before I go into questions, Tony laughing, is this, huh? When I was minister responsible for maritime and blue economy, when we were redesigning the board at the port, we determined that we needed to have a member of the union, of the largest union in the port, on the board. It made a lot of sense to me then, and believe me, it makes a lot of sense to me now. So we had a representative of the BWU on the board, Sir Roy Trotman. What I like about Sir Roy during the course of those meetings is that no matter what angle you came from, Sir Roy always reminded us of one thing: the workers, the workers, the workers. And that any policy that we put in place in the union, in the port, the union had a say in it, and making sure that the workers were represented. I see the same exact thing with Tony, to the point where sometimes some colleagues may wonder if Tony is still with us. Because it's always the workers, the workers, the workers. And who are the workers? The people, the people, the people. And so we have a model that makes sense. In fact, when I do this amalgamation, I intend to make sure that we have representatives of the union on the new board of this new agency, because it makes sense. And what happens is that a lot of things that could potentially be a problem are stopped before they become a problem. Things that you would not have seen to put in place to help people are put in place to make sure you help people. And Tony could list, I don't know if she's done it today, she should list the amount of things that we were able to achieve for workers. You think minimum wage drop out the sky? And that we can review minimum wage because it dropped out the sky? You think the agricultural workers that had no toilet facilities for all these years, that it got dropped out the...
Medical exams for gas station attendants, equal pay for workers in construction.
You can go on. The point is that there are a number of things that we put in place for the workers, for the people, because of Tony's presence. And so they want to use that. I wonder sometimes, and I'm a man, I wonder sometimes if women don't get targeted differently. The way they go after PM, the way they're coming after Tony Moore. And the way now they're choosing to go after the DPM. And we see it every single day. But I say to this Labour Party that you have a government of which you can be extremely proud. You have a government that has said that they were going to do a lot of things and delivered on them. You have a government that continues to care about people. You know, one man once told me, Kirk, you know, all you talk about all the time is people. People are BLP, man. All you talk about all the time is people, people. But what else in the world matters? What else in the world matters but people? You have a government that restored education. Now we have to be lectured about what to do with education. The hypocrisy for me is mind-boggling. But you know, the one thing that we must not allow to happen is for people to believe the lies that are being told about this Labour Party. The one thing that must not happen is that y'all must feel that we should be scared about praising this Barbados Labour Party or wearing your BLP shirts or your red shirts, because this government has served you well. It has served the people well. Miss Motley, Prime Minister Motley, listen, when I travel, I get invited to sit at all kinds of tables, not because they know Kurt Humphrey, not because they ever see me. When you hear Canada just saying for me, the Netherlands, I was in New York 2 weeks ago at a conference. Netherlands sent for me. Canada sent for me. Everybody sending for me. They don't know me, but they know me, Motley. And they know what she has done for this region. They know what she continues to do for this region, what she's done for this country. We should continue to lift her up. I asked you to continue to lift the Barbados Labour Party up. I asked you to continue to lift the entire cabinet up. And I ask you to continue to lift up your great MP in Tony Moore. Thank you all very much.
Am I seeing a hand up? Is that a hand I see in the back? We can take a couple of questions at this time. Only for the sake of management, Minister, did we suggest the 20 minutes so that everybody could get a little bite. Minister has outlined a few elements of the work that he has been dealing with over these last years as minister. He also took the time to remind us that the Dems cannot make us run scared. We are the government, a government that is working for the people. If anybody had any doubt, even just take the drive from Cottage to here. We had a road like this, certainly not through the last years. But it is not my chance to speak. I get that opportunity when there's an election. But if there are no questions for the minister at this time, there is. Thank you, Paul. Paul Bentham, question?
Mr. Humphrey, thank you for your presentation. The question of welfare assistance is one that has been problematic to a certain degree in our constituency, and the number of people who are in need and readily present themselves for assistance, and in some instances the channels of relief are somewhat clogged. And I'm wondering if there is something that can be done to fast track those persons. As a social worker myself, I can readily make an assessment, and it's not hard to see that people definitely need assistance. And that window of relief is long. And people may need food today and can't wait until a month later to get it. So I'm wondering what can be done to fast track the level of responsiveness so that persons can be helped.
Thank you. That's a very good question. In essence, that is the point of the amalgamation to a certain extent. But first of all, let me acknowledge that the government increased welfare provisions by 40% when we came in. We gave an additional 40% on top of what was traditionally given at welfare. But we have to make access to welfare easier. I mean, if you listen to my speeches, I say the same thing. We got to make sure that when people come forward, that they're treated with dignity and with respect. The thing that hurts people most, I think, even more so than not getting service, more so than not getting through, is if they feel they got treated badly when they go. So that's why we've been doing a lot of training to see if we could treat people better. I also feel that you have to be realistic, because there's some cases, like I was on the phone this afternoon with a young man, 20-something years old, who told me he wanted the house. Young, able-bodied man. I was very reasonable. I kept him on the phone for a long time. We had a very good conversation, but I had to show him that, you know, in the whole scheme of things, in terms of priority, he'd be very difficult to prioritize. So you still have to be honest with people too. But at the end of the day, we have to be able to treat people better. That is why I think, one, when we do the amalgamation, we're going to have the opportunity to move around some of these social workers. And I also want to be fair to the social workers. I know you're one, Paul. We have to be fair to them. A lot of social workers are burnt out. You know, when you've been working in this area for a number of years, and all you get every day are problems, people cursing you every day, it gets hard. So we need to be able to move some of these social workers around. We need to be able to give, I've told the PS, you know, when they don't feel good, they don't come in, you know. Give people a chance to catch themselves, because workers are people too. But when we do the amalgamation and you have the centers in your community, you'll be able to file online. We're putting in place some new staff. Now these staff will be responsible for going out, so you don't even have to come in. They would go out, they would come to you. We just did a directory of social services. I think the website is directorysocialservices.com. So you could go there and see whatever services are available, the number and email and so on. Because to me, it's about access, making it easy for people to access. The other thing is that we have in our new computer system, when you log in, because you could do it online too, you'll be able to do it from home, you could apply from home. When you log in on the new system, you will see this is your application, this is how far your application has gotten, this is how many days this application has been at this stage, so that you're better informed to keep us honest and keep us accountable, which is new. Because right now, our application is made and you don't have a clue where it's gone. if anybody has seen it, how to track it, any of those things. So those are the things that we are putting in place to be able to better service persons. We're also going to need a few more social workers as well, some brand new ones to come in and to help us move the system forward and just continue to hold the system accountable. But I think those changes are going to make a big difference.
Minister, with this new system online and, wait, can you hear me? Yes. Yeah. With this new system, sorry. No problem. With this new system, especially with the online facilities, what changes can we see in our local welfare offices at the polytechnic, polyclinic, sorry?
When you say changes, you talking about staff changes or just general changes?
Staffing, changes in procedures.
Everything changes. Because we're going to have more than one. I think St. George has one welfare office now, right? For all of St. George. That's the first thing. You're going to have more than, huh? Office. Right, I think you're going to have more than one office. And then in that office, you're going to have more staff. Because remember what I'm saying is that when you walk in now, you can get childcare services, welfare services, disability services, elderly services, everything in that one spot. So when you walk in now, you have a one-stop shop. And you're going to have more social workers. Each of these offices will have a senior assigned and about at least 3 or so social workers. So you will have more people, and as I said before, we have these community outreach officers whose job it will be to come out and so to come to you and so on. But I also know that there have been some challenges in St. George, and so we're working to address some of those challenges. Yeah, some things. There have been some people who've also been helped, but there have also been some challenges, so we're going to work to address the challenges. Thanks. If there are no further questions,
Yeah, Minister Kurt, I want to compliment your ministry and having the amalgamation. That's very, very important because, you know, all senior persons have to be moving around from different area, from one area to the next. And I want to applaud your ministry for the amalgamation.
Thank you so kindly. I should also say before I pass the mic over that I would want to thank Cynthia Ford in her absence, who was the Minister of People Empowerment before me, for a lot of the work she would have done, the groundwork to start these changes and so on and so forth. Thank you very much.
Good day. I'm looking after a 93-year-old lady. And
Put the mic closer.
a 93-year-old lady, and she doesn't, no nurse don't come there to attend her. She used to be at Vauxhall, but she not there again. She's in by Lower Estate, St. George. And she's there up to a while ago and I leave in. I tell her soon be back. Because she's there fretting herself, said no one don't come to visit her as like a health aid person, but I'm there taking care of her.
She needs a nurse, like a constant nurse, or she just needs somebody to be there? You're the nurse?
Yeah.
So she needs additional nursing or like
I'm not a nurse. I'm just
okay.
taking care of her.
Okay. All right. So there are, well, two things. So the many older people who are at home who don't necessarily need around-the-clock nursing care. And for that, we provide home help assistance. You know, somebody comes, they clean the house, they do the hair, you know, basic, very basic.
She, when, she cannot walk like first time, because the knees are giving her a problem. So that's how I bathe her, I comb her hair. She cannot go to the bathroom. I do everything for her. I bathe her on the bed and give her lunch, breakfast, everything.
Right. So if I get the information, she could get home help. We could also have her assess for nursing care.
She used to have a nurse come there, but because she not living on the compound of the, it's just
Yeah.
in Vauxhall.
Yeah.
They
I understand.
they
So if
stopped
you
came
pass the
with her. 'Cause I used to
information to
come-
Tony, her particular information, we could follow up on it. All right?
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks so much.
Minister, several years ago, acreage of land was acquired for housing, referring to what is called Odell Glen. And word is coming through that there is an intention, initially it was for seroptimists, to deal with elder respite type care and or accommodation. Can you speak to us about what advancements have been made in that regard with respect to respite care nationally for older people?
Well, thank you for that question, and that's a very good reminder, actually. So we know that in Barbados we do not have proper respite care facilities for seniors or for persons with disabilities. And again, this government will be the first to be able to address it. If you listened to us at the end of the estimates, we did what we call a move-in. And we allocated $7 million additionally to what I had already had, an additional $7 million for National Assistance Board and $3 million for Child Care Board to do something very similar. So that will begin the process of us being able to either build a brand new facility for respite care and for elderly care, or to renovate a facility to be able to do it. I must tell you, Jessica, that MP Moore raised the same spot with me the other day and proposed to me that it would be the ideal location for such. And so as soon as we can, we're working with BARP and we're working with the seroptimists to be able to do it. So as soon as we can, we'll arrange with MP Moore and we'll do a site visit and see the space that is available and move toward being able to build it. If the land is available and it's appropriate, and I understand some plans have already been approved for the area, then that would be an ideal location. But again, remember that this government will be the first to put in place respite care facilities for persons with disabilities and seniors. If there are no further questions, I will hand over to the moderator.
Okay. Thank you, Minister. Can we give the Minister a round of applause again? So it was great hearing from the Minister the stuff that are being done in relation to social care, because, we hear a lot of talk from the Democratic Labour Party about what they've done, but I could tell you they did 2 studies, because a lot of talk was going on about the study that was done by the ministry, but they did 2 studies and no action. So it's great to see a lot of action being done in that particular ministry at this time.
Yeah. I think I need to say very clearly the studies that he's referring to, because you would have seen a clip circulating about, the government wasted all this money to do a poverty study. Now, first of all, how do you make decisions if you do not have data, if you don't have information? You can't. If you hear somebody saying it's a waste of time to do a poverty study, when all in the region doing the exact same study, because it makes sense you need to get, first of all, the only way you can establish a current poverty line is if you do a current poverty study. So when I listen to the criticisms by the Democratic Labour Party of doing this study, it makes me laugh because it makes no sense to criticize it. However, the point that he is making is that the last 2 poverty studies that they're now criticizing, what do you think about the hypocrisy? The last 2 poverty studies, the 2010 poverty study, who was in power in 2010? And who was in power in 2016? So they did the last 2 poverty studies. We are now doing a poverty study, and now they're criticizing the very same poverty study. When we chose to come in and to use the data, it is a hypocrisy that makes no sense, a desperation to lead that makes, and I shouldn't even say to lead, a desperation to be in government, or a desperation to be in authority. But leadership is a completely different thing. And what you've seen from this Labour Party is leadership. And I want you all to remember that there's a big difference between leadership, what you get from us, and a desperation to be an authority that you're sensing now from this current Democratic Labour Party.
Okay, thanks for that. So now we are going to move on to Senator Gregory Nichols, who's going to make his presentation.
Good evening, everyone. It's good to be here. I have been asking Tony to invite me to come up to St. George North. I haven't been here in a little while, and it's good to see some of the old faces. I will share with you that when I left home, my children were very concerned that I had on this color shirt. And they've already sent me pictures to let me know that I look odd up here, the only body in what they call a yellow shirt. But this is not a yellow shirt, right? This is an old shirt, by the way, and I think it's gold. And there was a time when the Barbados Labour Party also was represented by gold. And I remember there was also a time when we had a mantra that we should reach for the gold. And it is in that vein that I will begin my presentation on the Labour Clauses Bill. Context is everything. I'm not going to come to speak to you on legislation or the details of the legislation, but basically this is a piece of legislation that allows the government to start giving concessions to businesses that come into the country, get concessions. Ordinarily, everybody has to pay the taxes. But we want businesses to come in, so governments might give some concessions to set up a new industry or a new type of business or something that would generate employment. And all the bill is saying that if you are abusing workers in Barbados, you can't benefit from the tax concessions. Yep. That's all the bill is saying. Simple. If you come to Barbados and you abuse workers, like a certain hotel in the South Coast that everybody knows is a very bad employer, you can't benefit from the tax concessions that you are reaping, because the people of Barbados cannot be the basis under which you make massive profit. This is not a bargain basement place where you could come in, cheap labor, abuse the labor, make some profit, and go back out of the country. This piece of legislation has been attacked only for one reason: because there is a new relationship between Labour and the Barbados Labour Party. Minister Kurt touched on it. I can call him Kurt because we went to school together. We went to yes, we were domino champions at university together. We were supposed to be repeat champions, and Kurt would never tell his story how he lost us the finals on the second occasion. But Minister Humphrey was making the point that whenever there is a connection between Labour and the Barbados Labour Party, there seems to be a problem. For a long time, in the last 30 or 40 years, there has been a solid relationship between the Democratic Labour Party and the Labour movement in Barbados. You saw several DLP candidates being members of a DLP government and in cabinet as well. The Evelyn Graves, Sir Roy Trotman, Robert Morris, Harcourt Lewis, and we could go down the line. And all the others that were in different unions that ran as candidates. And although I'm scheduled to speak about the Labour Clauses Bill, I said context is everything. Because there must be some recounting of the history and the why this relationship has changed. Most of you will know that as a practicing lawyer, I get myself involved in a lot of labor law cases in Barbados. And between 2013 and 2018, you saw a deliberate effort by the Democratic Labour Party to destabilize the labor movement in this country. And I can give you some things to remind you. About November 2013, Minister Sinclair gave a statement of fiscal consolidation in which in 2014 they sent home almost 4,000 Barbadians working in the government sector, the public sector in Barbados. That birthed that movement. You remember the workers at the BADC when they went down and said everybody above the age 60, above the age of 60 must go home. I did that case. We won the case, and I must thank the Barbados Labour Party government for paying the people the money that was due to them after having won the case. Cost the taxpayers millions of dollars to pay those people for the 6 or 7 years they had to wait. Imagine you are above the age of 60 and somebody tells you, well, go long home. Just so. Without notice, one day, you can't work anymore. You remember that case? You remember the NCC workers? The NCC workers that were sent home under the Democratic Labour Party. all the statutory boards, when the teachers were facing a pinch and having difficulty with dealing with Ronald Jones and the Ministry of Education, the union called a meeting and the wicked DLP government docked the teachers' pay. The teachers took, the Barbados Union teachers took the government to court. That case was settled by this government and the teachers' money repaid. Mary Redmond in the Barbados Secondary Teachers Union was planning to have a meeting. And she was concerned that her membership would suffer the same fate as the Barbados Union teachers. We went to court to get an injunction. And the judge looked at me and tell me that if the government wrong, the government will pay. So she not granting an injunction. Although in law, you cannot dock people's pay in the manner in which it was done by the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Education under instructions from Ronald Jones. This Labour Party had to restore that too. Education officers are now starting to get money from a case that I did. I'm not calling out cases that I'm doing just because I want to big up myself. But I want you to remember that there was a concerted effort to destabilize the union movement in this country. Because anybody who opposed the Democratic Labour Party in that period felt the full weight of their fury. They drove all of the labor movement back into the bosom of the Barbados Labour Party, not because we went out there and tried to recruit Tony Moore and others, but we went out there in solidarity with the treatment that was being meted out to the working people of this country and the workers' representatives. And the taxpayers now have to pay the burden of all of that. So I want to suggest to you, when you hear this discussion and these attacks on your member of parliament, it is because that they understand that any time a government or I should say a political party goes back to its roots and place working people at the heart of what it does, it will humbug the other political party. So you can imagine, to our surprise, when the private sector was playing the fool, in my view, because these are laws of Barbados, the holidays we pay out, national insurance, social security, all of these things have to be dealt with under the laws of Barbados. And all the Barbados Workers Union was saying was, look, let us come to an arrangement where we can agree certain standards across the labor sector, whether it's the hotel workers, gas station attendants, people working in other fields of endeavor. Let us come to a common basic standards of decency for working people. And the private sector playing on. But you have people, you imagine, look, in 2006, 2007, cost of living was the DLP mantra. Cost of living, cost of living, cost of living. The Democratic Labour Party came to office and told you that they can solve cost of living. And they allowed a business to come into this country and build a supermarket in Welch's and St. Thomas called Cost You Less, intended to bring down the cost of living. Remember that? You know what are the concessions that were given to somebody to open a supermarket? We got supermarkets and mini marts all across Barbados, but the big tax holidays that were given to Cost You Less to operate a supermarket in Barbados, they were not bringing anything new. They were not bringing anything innovative. They did not add anything to the market to bring down the cost of food in this country. But large concessions were given to Cost You Less. Cost You Less cannot, and I'm not accusing Cost You Less of any mistreatment of workers, because I certainly haven't heard of anything else. They could be accused of other things, but not mistreatment of workers. But imagine they are not treating workers well and benefiting from the concessions. The labor clauses bill says we will put a system in place. I may not be arbitrary. The system is that if there is a complaint verified by the chief labor officer, then the Ministry of Finance will review the matter, and I'm not getting into policy details, and a determination is made, Tony, by the Employment Rights Tribunal, and then the minister will act on the basis of the concession granted by the minister to remove it, so there is a due process provision. Why is that a problem? That's not a problem because the government is unfair in the private sector. Imagine a government being accused of unfair in the private sector by the Democratic Labour Party. That is what they did when they opposed the Labour Clauses bill. And the leader of the opposition was telling you that the government acting unconstitutionally because the removal of a concession is property and we're taking away people's property. Now, for those of you who are more discerning, you will understand that he's talking rubbish. Because, and I said this in the Senate chamber, if taking away a concession from a business was depriving somebody of their property unconstitutionally, then what would be the basis to take a tax from anybody in the first place? What would be the basis of taking tax or levying taxes on the business? If taking the concession was against the principles of the Constitution, then certainly you couldn't levy the tax in the first place. But he knows better. What they are trying to do is to give the people of this country an impression, a false impression, that we have a dictatorial government that is going out there trampling on people's constitutional rights. So when you keep saying these things that the government is a dictatorship and the government is breaching the Constitution, there are several occasions in which people bring cases before the courts to challenge the constitutionality of various things, like the Bail Amendment Act and other things, and the courts rule on them. But they are not going to bring any challenge to the Labour Clauses bill because they know it will fail. They know it would fail. So, but they're saying that these things are unconstitutional because they want to get you into this fury that this government trampling on your rights. Well, this is the same piece of legislation that ensures that your tax dollars are not being remitted to a business that is offending workers in this country. That is all the legislation was intended to prevent. A business taking advantage of the workers while benefiting from tax concessions. But we were cast as the worst administration and that the bill was clumsy. I heard that from one of the new BLP senators, not the ones that support Ronnie, but the others that support the other side. That the bill was clumsy, and the young senator that came in said that the Barbados Labour Party was grandstanding. Grandstanding? Look, in the last DLP 5-year term they abolished, sorry, I shouldn't say abolished, they repealed the Holidays with Pay Act and replaced it with a new act that repeated everything that was in the former act. I don't know if Tony is aware of that. Yes. The Holidays with Pay Act that was passed by a Grantley Adams Barbados Labour Party administration was repealed and replaced with the same act. So they put a little thing from the Employment Rights Act that they had already passed and attach it on. Now, you can amend a piece of legislation if you want to add something to it. But those that are discerning among us will ask the question, why would you repeal a piece of legislation that you were in the house at the time? Repeal it, so that means it's no longer law. Replace it with another piece of legislation that is the same thing. That is because they want to say that they were the party that passed the Holidays with Pay Act. So the Holidays with Pay Act would be the Holidays with Pay Act 2015 or 2016, the year it was passed. It would not be a Holidays with Pay Act 1951 or 52 when it was first brought to the legislation of this country by the Barbados Labour Party. That is wickedness. So when this young senator says that the Labour Party is grandstanding on the Labour Clauses bill, he understands that he doesn't want you to make the connection that this government is prepared to say to the private sector, we can draw the line when it comes to workers' rights in Barbados. And we are serious about it. We are going to protect the environment, we are going to protect our ecosystems, but we can also protect our people. This is not a place where we can come in, set up a business, and unfair Barbadians. So when we are grandstanding, that is a badge of honor I think the Labour Party will wear proudly. We have to wear the badge proudly because, as Tony has indicated, and Minister Kurt Humphrey has indicated, We have come to office and started to redress a lot of the things that have been found wanting by working people in this country. And we will continue to do so because all of us have come from similar backgrounds and understand the importance of taking a country forward bit by bit and us moving together. Working people cannot be sacrificed on the altar of bringing and wooing businesses to come to this country. And I want the Barbados Labour Party family here this evening, and those of you who are watching in cyberspace, to let us recommit ourselves to working, as my good friend Kurt says, people over politics. Workers are the backbone of any country. This government came to office with a promise to do right by the people of this country at a time when the economy was not growing, at a time when there was a lot of hopelessness in the country, at a time when young people were leaving school without any jobs available to them and no opportunity to further their educational careers in this country. And they were telling you that Elbar didn't promise free education forever. They were proud to tell you that. We come from communities, Dwight, Tony, Kurt, and myself, that understand the importance of a university education to all of us. Shane too, sorry. And Jessica. I'm talking about people who would have come up around the same time, because we all went to school at different places together and so forth. Well, Shane is a little younger than us. We understand the importance of that plank to the development of the country. We replace that policy as one of the first orders of business. And I am sure there's some correlation between the drop in major crime in Barbados and putting bright young people back into the University of the West Indies. Because when bright young people have no hope and they go on the block and sit down and line, they use their intelligence for devious means. And I think you all understand that. This party will continue under the leadership of Ms. Motley, under the leadership of Minister Humphrey, Minister Sutherland, and backbencher Tony Moore, who plays a pivotal. Let me tell you something about your MP. She ain't easy, you know. The ministers here might not want me to tell you this, but she's take the parliamentary party and hold it by the scruff of the neck and remind us where we come from and our connection. And we, as the Prime Minister said and the Deputy Prime Minister said during the estimates, go around the room. On the Labour Clauses Bill, every single man jack on the Labour Party had to vote as a vote of conscience, whether we going forward with this here or the way we can put it on the back burner. Everyone. It wasn't that this is something that was being done to placate the Barbados Workers Union, but everybody in the Barbados Labour Party parliamentary group except the leader of the opposition, because since I was a senator, I've never seen him at one of those meetings. Not one. And you will never see him at a party conference. Have you ever seen him at a party conference? Exactly. We went around the room, and I was a little surprised that we were being called on this because there was no opposition to it. But the noises that were being kept in the country made it sound that the Labour Party was treading on dangerous ground because we are about to upset the apple cart and bring down the kingdom of heaven on all of our heads. No. 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 You cannot come to Barbados, make profit, pay less taxes than everybody else that doing the same business that you are doing, and unfair working people. Not under our watch, not under the Barbados Labour Party, not under the leadership of Mayor Motley, and not under the astute leadership of the Barbados Workers Union, led by your own MP, a pivotal cog in the wheel of the Barbados Labour Party here in St. George. And I want to say to Tony, long may our relationship remain, because it's vital that as we develop policy, as Minister Humphrey has said, that we keep in mind what is good for working people at the heart of the policy creation engines in the Barbados Labour Party. As I close, because I know I see the chairman here tapping away, I want us to remember there was a time when this party felt that we can go for the goal. We are about a massive transformation of the country, because the Barbados that was of the 60s, 70s, and 80s is no longer the Barbados. And when you think about it, I'm sure some of you in the audience remember when Red Plastic Bag first came on the scene. He won the crown in '82 with a song, Sugar Made Us Free and Mr. Harding. And those songs were the calypsos that reflected the social tempo of the country. The sugar was king. And that was a major driver of a Barbadian economy that the Labour Party was transforming out of sugar. We can no longer plan for the future on the basis of a society and an economy of the past. And that is the fundamental distinction between the Barbados Labour Party and the DLP. They have no statecraft at all. They come and criticize everything that we do. When they come in office, they are like, you know, like when the dog barking when the car driving, when the car stops, the dog doesn't know what to do. That is the DLP for you. And their term from 1986 to 94 and 2008 to 2018 demonstrate that. They have no plan, no idea. And what they are going to do is to raise riot in this country every time something transformative occurs. As the older people, when Grantley Adams was criticized for the Deepwater Harbour, they keep noise. When the highway was being built, they keep noise. When the central bank, you know, and you need to go and research this. And this claim that Owenatha is now a friend of the DLP. For those of you who have never been around in the Owenatha time, you might not understand that. But can you imagine the DLP speaking in support of Owenatha? And you're hearing the leader of the opposition referring to Owenatha? He can't speak about David Thompson or Frandel Stewart, but he's speaking about Owenatha. But you remember what they said about him? All the things. And from the time we left government in 2008, we went off a cliff. Never. The country. We went off a cliff. And we are bringing it back bit by bit by bit by bit. So you see in the labor clauses a commitment to the workers, because we are not going to woo investment into the country. Because when they say that we needed to have at least 2.5% growth in the economy, and it has to be led by foreign direct investment. And it was criticized for 14 years for policy that invited investment into the country, because we can only grow if our population was growing at a certain rate. And he worked it out, and he said that was how he ran this country. You can't get all the money for government's coffers out of taxes or borrowing. You have to get some foreign direct investment to balance it out. We were criticized. We selling land to foreigners. All kind of nonsense they had. But this Barbados Labour Party will not allow foreign direct investment to come into this country with a view of offering the working people of this country. The history of the Barbados Labour Party and the history of the Barbados Workers' Union were carved out of the same. You see these devices? Huh? Listening to what he's saying and calling somebody that I ain't tell you to call. Get me in trouble. You know what I mean? This trajectory that we have come from is important. Tony Moore's return to the Barbados Labour Party. When I'm saying Tony Moore, I'm saying that she is the proper representative of Labour in the Parliament of Barbados. And Labour should always have a place in the Parliament of Barbados. When Bobby Morris was in there, it wasn't a problem. When Evelyn Grace was in there, it wasn't a problem. When Sir Roy Trotman was in there, it wasn't a problem. When Harcourt Lewis was a minister of state in the ministry of the Prime Minister's office, it wasn't a problem. Labor has returned to the place where it should always be, in the Parliament of Barbados. And your member of Parliament is there to make sure that the Labour Party's anchor is fixed, making sure that we make life better for the people of this country. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you. And remember, we can still go for the goal in this Barbados Labour Party.
Thank you so much, Senator. Questions? Do we have questions? Do I have any hands up? And while we wait for those hands, I am fired up, Senator, because never are we in the Labour Party to feel because the Dems make enough noise, we got to play shy. Always polite, but drop the bombs where you have to drop them. That is what I would want to recommend this afternoon. So thank you, Senator, for reminding us that because they're talking loud and going low, we still going high. Questions, please. As my brother would say it, they are all froth and no beer. You might want to say it yourself before you praise your questions.
No, I don't have a question. That's all I wanted to say.
You want to say it now so everybody can hear?
As my brother would say, they are all froth and no beer.
Okay, while you ponder your questions, we have Manley. I see you moving in your chair. Roger?
Good afternoon, Chairman, and the audience. I want to make an inquiry, right? Now, recently, the government pension has been removed from the Treasury, and it goes under the auspices of the National Insurance. I don't know if you're aware of that. Now, what I want to find out, right, something that bothers me a lot, and that in your service, in the government service, you would have paid, or probably anywhere else, you would have paid national insurance for the service that you would have given to the government service. And at this stage, or, well, what is happening is that you have to pay, what they do is upload national insurance with the Treasury pension, and then you, however you do it, and your income tax return is worked out, you have to pay income tax. Now, I would have worked probably over 40 years in government service, and during that period, you would make your claims annually. And most of the time, I had never paid returns. Today, now I am a pensioner. I have to pay returns sometimes in the tune of $3,000 per year. Right? I'm wondering, since you had to pay national insurance over your service, why is it that you still got to pay it now in the form of returns? I don't know if you understand what I'm saying, but that is what I'm faced with, right? That I have to pay, as I said, well, I don't know what's going to happen now since the Treasury pension is now moved to national insurance. I don't know if you're aware of that, but it is moved now from the Treasury, does not have any auspices in this regard. And I'm hoping that when there is an increase across the board for the government service. Technically, you would get what is known as a COLA, cost of living allowance, right? This is when the pension was with the Treasury. I'm wondering if now it has gone over to national insurance, if that would be continued.
Yeah, thank you very much. That's an excellent, excellent question. Well, I think, first of all, we need to get the details, a little bit more information. It's difficult to give policy on the trot, and I don't know the fullness of it. But we would have to speak to the Minister of Finance, the Minister or the Minister in the Ministry of Finance, and get back to you with an answer that is accurate. I don't want to just give you an answer, but I do know that we've moved it across. And I also know that the intention wasn't to double burden you. And I also know that the changes that we made to NAS safeguarded our capacity to be able to have NAS into the future, for sure, because the NAS was going to be broke in about 15 years or thereabout. So those changes were made to make sure that you could benefit. But in terms of your own particular circumstances, I would ask you to give me the opportunity personally to look into it and to get back to you, if that's okay with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Manley, and of course, we will be following up with you, Minister, Mr. Crookendale. Any more questions? If not, it gives me great pleasure to introduce the next speaker. We all know St. George is a twin constituency, north and south. The next speaker hails from St. George South, the not as sweet part of St. George, if I could be biased. You know, he's not going to let me forget that. But more importantly, this evening, the Minister of Housing is coming to bring to us the initiatives taken, progress made, dreams hoped for, and yes, possibly some challenges that his ministry may be confronted with. Minister Dwight Sutherland, please, if you would.
Good evening to all my colleagues, parliamentarians, senators. It's indeed a pleasure to be in the other side of St. George, but still at home. Still at home, and I disagree fundamentally with my good friend Jessica, because there's nothing sweeter or more sweeter than the entire St. George. It is indeed sweet St. George. The north and the south are indeed sweet. It's a twin. And, you know, coming to this part of St. George, I just drove on a piece of road. I sure Kurt drove on a piece of road. On a piece of road that before we dodged. When we came from Market Hill, we dodged. When we came from this side, we dodged. Those persons who know St. George well, we don't have to dodge. No, we want to drive on these roads. And I want to thank the MP for St. Michael Southeast, the government, and indeed your MP who pushed for those roads. Don't think it is only the Minister of Public Works. Your MP, as my good friend and colleague, Kurt Humphrey said earlier, and Senator Nichols, Gregory, my other good friend, Tony is a thorn in all of our. Blunder. And I will address that. But she is indeed one who keeps us on our toes to ensure that St. George North, and not only St. George North, I heard Minister Humphrey, the people of this country, working class people, people of all classes, are looked after. And that's the importance of labor being part of this government. Indeed, we leave no stone unturned. I heard Senator Nichols spoke about the need for university education and stemming the flow of decay and crime in this country. But I have a portfolio, in my view, that is equally as important, Senator Nichols, with respect to crime and social decay. in this country. And that is where I want to begin my few minutes here with you this afternoon, because this government is moving housing from a state of dependency to a state of independency. And let me explain. The last administration, they built houses. Of course, in the 10 years they existed in this country, within a year time, we would have built more houses than they did in 10 years. I'm telling you, in a year time. By the end of this year, this financial year, we will surpass them. So sit tight. Don't be worried. Don't be worried. Just sit tight. They built houses over a 10-year period. Yes, for ordinary Barbadians, middle-income persons. But the difference between this government and the former administration is that we are pushing home ownership. We are pushing home ownership. Because we strongly believe that rental money is dead money, even though it gives you a roof over your head. There's a lot more you can do for yourself and your family. Self-actualization. Generation wealth when you own a property. You can go, and I'm going to speak to a few things here in St. George, because your MP asked me to let you know certain things, and I have to let you know what is going on. The neglect that the former administration placed on the people in the glebe and parish land, we're solving those problems. But the dependency on government, that's why our budget was premised on three things: growth, resiliency for Barbadians and Barbados, and people-centered. And people-centered speaks to empowerment and enfranchisement of our people, and that's what housing is about when you own a house in this country. Rent money is dead money. And some may ask, why is it taking so long? We can build the houses and put people in them to rent. Is that really what we want to do as a government? We don't want to do that. We are pushing ownership, empowering the people so that Gregory, and I can call names, and Miss Boucher, my primary school teacher, a pleasure to see you here. Your daughter and son. Of course she looks good, man. Look at her, man. Yeah. Yes. We look like brothers and sisters, though. Look at the two of us. Yeah? Miss Boucher, stand, let them see you, man. Stand, let them see my class 3 teacher, man. At Ellerton Primary. Ellerton Primary, yes. And the reality is, and I use people that I know. Miss Boucher, I call names. Gregory, Crookendale, your children, Manny, your children, and their children. When you have that asset, you own it, they can leverage it to send their children to University, Gregory, anywhere, right? Yeah. They can leverage that asset to acquire another property. That is building generational wealth. But when you're renting, you don't own the property. And, you know, if I take you to certain parts of this country with respect to housing, the member for St. Michael South, he can speak to this. All right? You will cry. When you knock on doors in housing units in this country and you realize that a 2-bedroom unit occupies 15 and 16 persons, you would understand why this government is adamant that we must build housing in this country and people must own them. It brings tears to your eyes when you go into these housing estates and you see 15, a grandmother with a daughter, with 2 daughters, and their daughters have children, and their daughters' children have children, and all live in a 2- and 3-bedroom unit. And then they begin to extend by putting on a little piece in the back. And of course, when they begin to extend, those units were built in the 1960s and 70s and 50s. And I won't call certain areas because Those of you who listen would understand what I'm speaking about. And you add on, and then your sewer system, the current sewer system can't accommodate 15 and 16 in a house. The electrical system, thank you, my dear, you know where I'm going, can't accommodate the extension. You bring in the washing machine, you bring in the smart TVs, you bring in the microwaves on systems that are antiquated and ancient. And the dryers. And the thing that I like now that Joseph always using, what do you call it? The air fryer. You know? My son loves the air fryer. Yeah. So we can have fun here this evening. Tony says she too. Tony loves it. It is easy. You get it, you put it in the air fryer, and go on. When you dress it, you come out and get something and go on. But we have to understand, we have a very old housing plant in this country. Very old housing plant in this country. And the Dems, you know, I ain't come here this evening to share no blows on the Dems. That's the truth. Because the Dems, one man who I believe should be made to go back to the polls. They have found a voice through him. No problem. We have an opposition, and we will work with it, the people of this country. But the facts must be told. And I said in Parliament, he has hitched his wagon against the DLP. Therefore, he has to take the blame and answer for what they have done to this country. He can't excuse himself. I have to take responsibility for what went on the Owen, on the Tom, and whoever. And in the Ministry of Housing, I have to take full responsibility now. Even though the Prime Minister speaks about files and she red bike, I got one in housing too. And at a later date, we will discuss that red bike. Not now, now is the time for that. Now is the time to let people know what we're doing as a country, as a ministry. And we are pushing ownership. And I ended off there in my budget speech because I had some strategic objectives, and that was the first one I was going to look at. The whole aspect of the difference between the DLP and the BLP. Right? Poor housing is associated with ill health and social decay. And when you go into communities where persons have to compete for a bed to sleep, people go, and this is real, you know. People have to sleep. Kurt, we hear about these things in urban corridors in this country. You go in, particularly the urban corridors, go to sleep from 7 to 10 because so-and-so got to get a little rest between 10 and 1 because they got to do some work. So they have a sleeping schedule. And we really, the sleeping in shifts, yes. And we listening to the Dems, talking about, they can talk about who. Be careful where you laugh at here. He who will laugh last, laugh best. And I telling you, the issues at Hope will be resolved shortly. And we can laugh last. We are working, is work in progress. And the Prime Minister clearly said there were mistakes made. So I ain't stand up here and telling you that all is dandy and rosy. There's no government that will execute 100% of their projects in no ministry correctly. But we aim for 80% though. We aim for 80%. So you stand out there and you laugh. This financial year you will see action in housing. But as I said, we found ourselves in a situation in national housing. 29,000 applicants for houses. 29,000 applicants for houses. And there are only 1,300 active rental units in this country. Think about it. They have 4,000, but the others have been allocated under the 20-year transfer program. So the others are owned or potentially owned by the occupants. But you have 1,300 active units and 29,000 applicants. Every day, someone calls me for a house. Yes. And all those 1,300 occupied. You may get one or two where someone decides to leave in or to drop out. But we have to tell the truth in this country and stop. We don't tell lies, but give people the correct answers when they ask you the questions. I need a rental unit. Of course, you can't tell them, where am I going to get it from? You tell them, we are fully occupied. The occupancy rate is over 100%, but we are building units. Not only units, we are building houses. And this government policy, we've started, you heard the Prime Minister mention we have built 1,100 over the last 2 years. And that is going to put a dent in the 29,000 applicants that we have. And when persons here, we set a target of 10,000 houses over 5 years. Why are you laughing at it? People will laugh at it because it is an ambitious target. There's nothing wrong with setting an ambitious target. But you're telling the country when you set the ambitious target that I intend to pitch, aim for the skies because I have 29,000 applicants. Do the math. 10,000 houses and 29,000 applicants. Do the math. How much is that left back? Still 19,000. So understand. Don't laugh at it and say it's an impossible task. It's not an impossible task. Once you begin, and that's why Hope was formed. And I listened to the crazy man on when it was Tuesday. Hope was formed because NHC alone can't build 10,000 houses. You have to understand, and the Prime Minister in her wisdom saw the need to create another agency that while NHC is focusing on the joint venture program, and I can speak to some of those, Hope will come and Hope will be the builder of houses. That was the whole genesis and the policy that we came up with, and we categorized the persons earning less than 2,500 will get this, persons between 25 and 5,500, and we recognize that there were some teachers whose salaries were slightly above, so we had to move from the 5,000 to 5,500, and then there's the 5,500 and up, what is happening at Atlantic Breeze. Houses are being built. Houses are being built, but we had to form an entity that will not utilize funds from the consolidated fund. You heard me. Spoke about the $75 million that was taken out. The Dems talk about 40, well, 60 million that came to Hope. I explained that 60 million. It is actually 56. It's 40 and 16.568. I got the figures in my head. The 16.568 was to buy the houses, the Guyanese Juravilla houses, those wooden houses, and the other 40 was for Hope to start their process of building at Vesper. Vesper was a tough site. And building at Poole and building at Colleton and building at Guinea. We have sites. We've identified 1,652 acres of land. And if you multiply that by 11, don't multiply it by 10. 10 was the old time building, 10 houses per acre. We have increased the density now. That's why you're building duplexes and quadruplexes, right? That's 4 on a block. 2 live up top and 2 live below. That's a quad. And you know what a duplex is. So that's why we've sought as a policy measure to increase the density. So the land that we have, the 16 or 1,700 that we have, and you multiply that by 11 or 12, you can go as high as 14, but I ain't going there. And you will see that you have enough land in this country to build more than 20,000 houses. You multiply it and you will see. We can't build them in 5 years. We can't build all 20,000 in 5 years. But what we will left, more will come on. And those who will come after us will have the responsibility then to carry on. And the Prime Minister will go down in history as having pioneered such a project. So for me, when I listen and I hear the conversation about shutting down NHC, you start one, you can't shut it down, you can't shut down NHC, because Hope alone can't build the 10,000, just like NHC alone can't build. So you'll be crazy to talk about shutting down NHC. And I can tell you that the board of NHC on Thursday approved about 4 housing projects, 4 joint venture projects. And I see a board member in here. I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but I was told they approved to start at Vineyard 600 houses. They approved to start at St. Bartholomew 42 houses. They approved to start at Coverley in Christchurch 36 houses. And they approved in St. George, a place called Harmony Cottage, 80 houses. That's the work of a board. That's the work of National Housing Board. So you pray tell me, and with the joint ventures that National Housing are engaging in, National Housing, the skin in the game, as we often say, you gotta have skin in the game. The skin in the game, National Housing give the land, the developer comes in and does the infrastructure, build the houses, and sell the houses. And they're utilizing our database of 29,000 applicants that include public servants and the ordinary people, gas station attendants. And the project at Vineyard is the largest that we will be engaging in this year, the financial year 2023-2024. 600 houses for low-income people in this country. The gas station attendants, the civil servants at the lower end of the spectrum in government, and any other person, your children. But we ain't leaving out St. George North. We can't leave out St. George North. Between the two of us, we have 110 acres between the two of us. You multiply that and see how many houses we are going to build. Draxall Harmony Cottage will start, and soon after, next door here, and I'm giving you the commitment. We are now identifying the joint venture partner. We have some 30 acres, Old Post Office Road over here, that some houses will go up on behalf of your constituency representative who has been pushing me, asking me about housing. And between the two of us, we will get our share of housing in St. George. But we are not unfair as a government. We look around where the land is available. There are 3 parishes where 65% of the land are located in: St. Lucy, St. Philip, and St. George. Next, St. John. So we have land, St. Peter. And in the St. Michael area, we have, yeah, that's fine. I will speak to that shortly. You made me lose my train of thought. And in the St. Michael area, where we don't have the abundance of land, we have to build a high rise. And at Exmouth, just off of Spring Garden, when you leave Burge of Paints and you drive, that is government land vested in NHC where we will build housing. And my good friend from St. Michael South always tell me, I ain't got no land, but you gotta look after me. And every single development, the people of St. Michael South, you will see that you will move. You're gonna have to move over to St. Michael South, but you will get land in St. Michael, houses in St. Michael. Because you can't leave him out. That's my good friend. And I can't leave him out. So every development, he can get 1 or 2 or 3. Huh? So the people of St. Michael South, you rest assured, you gotta look after your friends, because your friends will look after you. we're talking, and I heard again in Parliament, and I can speak to that before I come home, because I have some issues that I have to address. Two fundamental issues I have to address for the people of St. George North. Good news. But Tuesday again, I heard false statement. No one occupying the Joe Villa houses. Now, we have 11 houses in Clifden in St. Philip, that's just below the prison. They're finished. And what is the hold up? What the Prime Minister spoke about, mortgage, conveyancing, mortgage application. So you have persons allocated to these houses, but they're going through the process with their mortgage applications. And the Prime Minister said, the Attorney General and myself, we have to meet with the banks and other lenders to see how we can reduce a mortgage application from taking 6 months down to 2 months or 1 month. And some of the piece of legislation that we have to amend to give title once we vest land or transfer land, the Vesting and Disposable Crown Lands Act. We have to address that to make sure that when we transfer land, that the banks and the lending institutions recognize that land. So we have to amend the legislation. So these are some of the things that are taking long. We have houses finished. Next week, 21 persons will move into Parshland Extension. 21 houses, persons who will be relocated from Rock Hall. These houses have been built and they're paying for the houses. Don't tell them about that the houses are free. Contrary to some naysayers who go on Facebook and talk about we relocating squatters and we getting them free houses. They're paying for the houses. They will move in 21. And at Hackett Hall, we have 12. At White Park Road, we have 16. And these are the things that are taking long relate to mortgage applications. Vesper Gardens, we have over 60 of the houses out of the 152 or 54, I usually mix it up, I think it's 152, that are ready to be occupied. But again, we have one lending institution with 119 applications processing since last year. Since last year. So I'm listening to the naysayers, but I am telling you 2023, 2024 and onwards, Barbadians going to be shouting and Barbadians going to be happy because we intend to stop the social decay. And one of the ways, not only through crime, but housing will go a long way in addressing these issues. Now let me come to St. George North. Only recently I heard the bishop, he's not from up and on, he's from Possum Quay, Possum Vidente. We can if we think we can. He's a large boy like me. But congratulations to up and on their victory. Thank you. And he announced that the glebe lands, the tenants at the glebe, 123, these lots were surveyed by the Ministry of Housing, Lands and Maintenance. I don't know if you recall last year Paris Speaks, and I told my colleague I am not going back to Paris Speaks and sit down and stare at the people from the glebe. I will run first. I will run out the room. Because they're right. They need their title to their homes, their houses. And the bishop, through the diocesan trustees, have started the process that has taken so long. And again, your MP and I discussed this. We cannot run from the fact that certain things have taken longer than they should have. But I'm committed that in the financial year 2023-2024, every single person at the glebe tenantry would sign a conveyance to announce them as home owners and property owners. And Tully, yes, I know you signed Tully. Well, I don't want to call your name, but it says sign, so I call your name. That's why I looking at some people here. This is what this government is about. Home ownership. The last administration, I ain't going there. But when the books are written, you will see which administration would have been good to the people of St. George, not only North, but South. And it would be remiss of me to come here this evening and don't mention my good friend and your former MP, Glenn Clark. A man who took not only St. George North, but I thank him daily for the help he has given to me as an MP, a new MP in St. George South in 2013. You will believe that Glenn Clark was running. He went with me in every district, and he did the same with my running mate and colleague when she came in. So it would be remiss of me and his son. I want to thank him if he's watching from Canada. Of course he's watching. I want to thank you for the work you have done for the people of St. George, not only North, but the people of St. George South. This moves me now to a bigger issue that we have in St. George. North, parish land, the people at parish land. They too don't own, they don't have title to their properties. They've been paying government. This is a land that has been managed by the Attorney General trustee in the Attorney General's office, and the rent is being paid to National Housing. And this is land from the 1800s. And Tull, you know persons in parish land. Crookendale, you know persons in parish land. The one just below Shafet. Carters down that side parish land. Where Son Haynes and them used to live. Old Son Haynes, Lord Retchie, in the grave. You know Son Haynes, Crookendale. He was one of the founders of the credit union movement with my grandfather in Ellerton. And he lived this side of the fence, but he would come up every Friday night and help people with the little meat intern, the Susu meat intern. Those were the guys who started it. So that land has on it over 100 occupants, persons paying rent for years, and they don't own the land. And I'm telling you tonight, I bring the news not only for Glebe, but parish land, that we intend to go to Parliament through an Act of Parliament, either through an Act of Parliament or through the Land Acquisition Act, and acquire that land so we can give title to those persons who live at parish land for years. Now, that is what this budget was premised on. People-centered, empowering, and enfranchising, and creating growth. Because when you own a piece of property, it can help you not only send your children to university and create generational wealth, but it can help you start a business as well. Because you can leverage that, Kurt. You can leverage that. You can go to fund access. You can go to the lending institutions, and you can leverage that property. The businessman here with no one is shaking his head, because he understands. And that is what we have to do for ordinary Barbadians, to empower them and enfranchise them. Give them a piece of this rock, not only in terms of talk, but in terms of action, so they can do for themselves. Cut out the dependency syndrome. That is what the last administration did. Open your hand all the time, take that, take that. No. We want Barbadians to be independent people, have a stake in their own destiny, be empowered, and indeed become self-actualized and build a sense of communities. That's how you build communities, wholesome communities, and sustainable communities. Through housing as well. Members, my friends, for the time that I will spend in that ministry, resilient housing. You know, you know, we can speak to so many things here. And I want to thank my colleagues for prompting me. Because the budget was about growth, resilient Barbadians and Barbados, and people-centered. Now, the housing in this country, we have pioneered resilient housing in this country. In terms of renewable energy, we have given a new lifeline on housing and to drive the cost down, to allow us through the roof photovoltaic, solar photovoltaics on the roof. And hope, when you curse in hope, you have to understand the innovation, the thought process that went into forming hope. You know what hope stands for? Most of you know. Those who don't know, hope ownership, home ownership providing energy. HOPE, home ownership providing energy. Because where can you get a 3-bedroom wall house for $172,000? Where? Sorry, a 2-bedroom for $172 and a 3-bedroom for $221. Where you can get that from? Only at Hope. Because why? You're paying for the house. And what is happening with the infrastructure and the land costs? The roof, the photovoltaic, the solar PV, is paying for that land and infrastructure over a 20-year period. So you only got to worry about your house. The roof, Hope takes the roof. And we just formed Hope Solar PV and SPV, Special Purpose Vehicle, was approved at Cabinet, which is a company. Those terms that we use, SPV, is a company that will manage. It is not private sector. And Hope is not private sector. I don't know where the opposition leader got that from. He was very misleading in his discourse. Whatever he said about Hope, some of the things we have not done right, yes. But it is not a private company. It is a commercial state-owned enterprise with the government being the sole shareholder. And likewise, the SPV company that was formed 4 weeks ago to manage the financial affairs of the solar, so that when you go into your house at some point in time, Gregory or Shakira, when you go into your home, that money will help you live, because you are paying. Hope will be taking control for 20 years and paying for the land and the infrastructure, and all you got to worry about is your house, paying for your house. And that is what the innovation by Prime Minister Motley is about. Forming Hope, not to shut down NHC, but to take the drain off the consolidated fund. Now, I want to end on Hurricane Elsa, because I know in this room as well, there were persons who suffered the effects of the freak storm and Hurricane Elsa. Again, we are not perfect, but we took on the responsibility to repair and rebuild 1,400 plus houses, close to 1,500. Persons opted for material, that was 231. Families or households opted for material, and that was given by NHC to those persons. I can travel from St. Lucie to St. Philip, from St. George North to St. George South, from the Pine to the Bayland. I can travel from St. Peter to Christchurch, Silver Hill, to Gall Hill. And we can find houses that were repaired by this government, the three agencies of Urban Development Commission, Rural Development Commission, and National Housing Corporation. The value of those 1,700 houses is $110 million that this government, Prime Minister said, we will put our Bajans who suffered the effects from the freak storm and Hurricane Elsa back into respectable and resilient housing. Because those houses didn't have hurricane straps. But every single one of those houses that we have built so far, they're outfitted now with hurricane straps. so that if we get a little high wind, we able now to withstand. 'Cause most of them lost the roof, and then after the roof, then several things occurred. And we were able to employ over 400 contractors in this country. We didn't bring in any labor to fix those houses or rebuild those houses. 400 Barbadians, small businesses, were contracted either through UDC, RDC, or NHC to rebuild those houses. Were we perfect? No. Sometimes money was tight. You know, it's taking up $110 million to fix these houses. Everybody think, I call it a war chest. People think we got a war chest. So some months, we have to breathe easy, take it easy. The Prime Minister said, take it easy. You can get the money, you can't, you know. So every month, people looking for us to put 10 million, 10 million. It takes some countries to recover from a hurricane 10 years. This is only the third year. And the good news to the people of Barbados is that we will be finished, hopefully, before the next hurricane season. All of those houses. The only houses that we won't be finished are the ones where the landlord told the persons, you ain't coming back here to build. Those are the challenging ones, and that's where no government, no, we have to find alternative. That's where our social housing program comes in. That's where our rental program comes in, right? So, St. George, yeah, rent to own is part of government policy. Sorry, my dear. You know, you're asking the right questions, or you're making the right statement. Government has a rent to own policy. For those persons who are earning under $2,500, those persons can rent, create some skin in the game. You know, you're renting and some of the rent going towards ownership to a stage when you believe you can go to the lending institution and you say, hey, listen, look, I want my mortgage now. And it would be probably significantly less, probably half of what you would pay if you had started to try to own the house from up front on a salary of $2,500. No, you still have your children to look after. Still have your children to look after. But Hurricane Elsa in St. George, we had close to 200 projects to be done. And I can say to you, we have 35 more out of those 200 to finish. And that is remarkable. Between the north and the south of St. George. I ain't separating the two. Because if you touch you, you touch me. If you touch me, you touch you. We don't separate the two. Glenn Clark and Louis Tull taught me that. St. George is one. And when the wind blows high in the south, it's blowing high in the north as well. So I came here this afternoon with a message to the people of St. George and to the country. We are on a mission with housing in this country. We have done the hard work of identifying the land, and we have not in no way negatively impacted the agricultural sector or any other sector that will rely on the use of land, the renewable energy sector, to fuel growth in this country. It was done holistically by all ministries, including people's empowerment, because we have some housing projects. We have to engage in social housing projects. This bright young man here, and I will sit and we will come up with the ideas of how we're going to provide social housing, the housing for fire victims, the housing for the homeless. These are the things that we are working on now, and you're going to hear a lot more on those. But I want to thank you all for giving me the opportunity again in the north of my woods to address you. And indeed, anytime at all, my running mate calls on me, I will be here and ready to perform duties. Stay the course, St. George North and St. George South. We love you. We will continue to look after you. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Sutherland. Are there any questions from the audience?
I don't think this is just a question, but I think it's a good initiative that you're doing, Honorable Dwight Sutherland, to the rent to own is very important because for years, people will be maybe a certain age or a certain bracket, and many times they fail at the credit union and the banks. But the rent to own is a good category that they can rent, and by that time, whenever they get to a certain place that they have equity and they can qualify. So that's a very good plan, and just not for the elder people, but for the younger people too as well in a certain brackets.
That's a good point, and I'm glad you raised for the youth, the young people, because I think in our 2022 manifesto, Minister Humphrey and colleagues at the head table, we said we have to push housing for young people in this country. I think the under 35 grouping, and when we have classified certain categories, we have made certain classifications in terms of how we will build out the housing sector among the young people. And those persons, not only civil servants we are focusing on, but your exception, you raise a very good point. The young people, young home owners, is critical to this government also in building out our housing program. So I want to thank you for raising that. I did not raise it in my speech, but you were able to bring the clarity to it, and that is what we are working on, one of the areas, young home owners under 35. So I thank you.
Okay, good night, Mr. Sutherland, and to everyone. So there is the constant, obviously everybody speaks of brackets in terms of the financial aspect, so brackets in terms of what you make monthly. My question is for persons like myself as a contracted worker who would have challenges in actually going to a lending institution or financial institution. We are practically not, in a position to do so as it relates to acquiring housing or housing situations for ourselves. What can you express would be an avenue for persons like myself to be able to do so?
Very, very good point. And again, right to own. You may be a contract worker today, but you may not be a contract worker next year. So why wait then until you become a permanent employee? And I think we too have to relook that policy, Minister, of contract workers not being able to, and these are some of the things that we will be discussing with the lending institution, because we have to meet with them as a result of the length of time the mortgage applications are taken, and that is one of the areas too we will speak with them, because once you're working for government, your money goes on your account. It can be taken out, the amount for the house, the same way you pay courts, the same way you pay any other institution that you would rent from, or you would take a refrigerator from, a store from. And I think that is one of the things we will be discussing up front with lending institutions. But we do have rent to own to cater to those issues right now, to solve those issues, so that when you get your skin in the game, I call it the skin in the game, your equity, then you can go to them and say, listen, look, even though I am a contract worker for 10 years, here I am. I have been able to pay consistently towards this home. And I think that's the best way. And that's why we are focusing on rent to own. Rent money is dead money. Rent money is dead money. So you're renting to own, and you're not renting for the rest of your life. All right?
The whole reason that what she's bringing out is a problem too as well, and I'm a young person, so I can talk about it. I've been in real estate for a lot of years. Many times, however, that people go forward to the institutions for a loan as a young person, but or even an older person, and when they see the word contract worker, instantly, if the employer or the human resource is not your friend, to be able to change that word from contract worker to employee, that's guts.
Sometimes too, it is how the letters are written. You're not, and I have seen it, you're not telling any lies about the person's tenure of work, but you write the letter in a way that they understand
lessen the heartache, and that the lending institutions themselves to have persons who they have to report to. So when they see the certain letters, so it is how you couch the letter, the language in the letter also, right? But we have found a way to help those persons who are contract workers, and that was one of the reasons why the right to own policy. And I don't see no reason why you can't own your own home in this country within the next 2 to 3 years or even less.
Okay, I guess that brings the end of Minister Sutherland's presentation. Can we have another round of applause for Minister Sutherland? And I want to thank the Ministry of Housing for looking into these matters, especially with parish land and with the persons in the Cleve, because there's a long time that these matters were had very over hundreds of years from 1800 since that land was there. So now I'm going to hand over to my MP Tony Moore to give the closing remarks.
All right, good evening again, and thank you, Shane, thank you, Jessica, for leading us through this session admirably. Now, where we had that last question is where I think I would like to begin. The last question on housing, because what that does is demonstrates the fact that this is not a government that is getting everything right, that is doing everything perfectly. What it does, it allows you to understand that we don't come here as if everything is perfect and we are not in touch with the people, and we don't know where people are hurting and where there are gaps existing in our policy and in our rollout. Now, the question of contract work, when Dwight started to say that we have to look at and we're going to fix it, I thought he was going to go on and say that cabinet has undertaken to abolish this thing called contracts altogether. But we know that we have been working at it systematically to ensure, because we understand it. We understand why it may have been done, but in positions like Kashera's, where she is doing a fundamental job in community youth work, and where you know that there are those multifaceted, interconnected areas, what is going to control crime? Youth work, fundamental, the sports, teaching people the discipline, housing, jobs, where at the same time we have to be focusing on doing so many things, and it really isn't cool. The person that is contributing so significantly to keeping the social fabric of society together will have to face the situation that you can't access housing. So this is something that y'all realize I'm talking funny, I got some braces. I just gotta get out there, and I feel so conscious right now. But the fact, okay, I had Shane this morning, this evening earlier, and some others laughing at my essays, right? So, but the fact that we are still hearing these complaints and we are aware should suggest to you that it's a work in progress, and it is one of those things where we still have a number of promises and commitments that have been made that are yet to be resolved. And that is one of the issues, this whole thing of contract work, especially in those areas that we understand are critical and will be ongoing areas that we know that we have to eradicate. But what Dwight was saying, in the meantime, we have to look at a way to get people past the hump, because, well, the grass is growing, the horse is starving. And I'm very grateful to my colleague for taking the time to come here this evening, because at the onset I said housing is one of those areas. Housing is one of those areas every Thursday night, and I'm going to ask Paul to stand because I believe he is well known. But since September, I had the privilege to have a liaison officer attached to my office, which has been a godsend. And I'll say a bit more about that. But on Thursday evenings when we meet in the constituency office, ranking highest among the areas coming to us is housing. 3 occasions for the year, and I want to spend some time on this. I've had 3 constituents come in faced with the serious problem of being dislocated from their home and in less than a month to go. And this is where I want to make my appeal to families. I don't need to know the entire situation, but especially when you find yourself with some person sitting in front of you saying, my mother, tell me I got left by the end of the month. And that's a young mother with 3 children. And where, as Dwight has mentioned, the Minister for Housing has mentioned, the resources available to help, the will is there, but at present, the resources available to help are not as immediate as we would like. So I am tossed between Dwight, calling from Dwight to calling to Kurt, to having my officer, my assistant go around in the field to see where he could find a house that comes in at a reasonable enough rental fee that I can then come back to Kirk and say, Kirk, well, you gotta help me, you gotta find the means, because this person now doesn't work. In one case, lost a job because the children, taking care of the children as a single parent, has kept her away from the 12-hour job, the job that starts at 8 o'clock in the morning, and she leaves just after 8 at night, after she is counting off money as a cashier, then to have to go and catch a bus, then to come home, and that is causing frustration in the home with the extended family who has to be taking care of her 3 children, to the point that they say no left. And it might sound hard, and there's no criticism to the ones saying leave, because there is pressure being put on households. And we get it, but then our intervention, sometimes you feel almost helpless. And I must admit, I don't look forward to Thursdays, but I do it. I don't look forward, because when you have to look some person in the face with empathy, and you want to do something about their situation, but you genuinely do not know where to turn to ease that burden immediately, it makes you feel helpless. And yes, Dwight, it hurts deeply. Dwight is laughing that I actually voiced it, but I know the feeling of going home on a Thursday night and feeling, you know when you're trying to get the dust out of a mat and you're beating it against the side of the house or against the wall or something to get out all the dust. That's how you feel. And that's why, Kurt, I could understand what you're saying about the social workers who are facing it every day. But what we have to do is what I'm still doing. At least if you can't help, we have to confront the situation with empathy and with understanding and trying our utmost to do the little that we can do wherever we can do it. And that's why I'm going to encourage the social workers and so on, notwithstanding we understand that you're tired. This is sometimes the difference between how we respond to people is the difference between life and death. It could literally mean the difference between a person walking away from their children, taking their own life, or something like that. And it is draining on personal resources, because sometimes people think that it is any amount of money that an MP has. How much it is that we have as an amount a month? $2,550. And that has to support the office as well as help with the constituency. And by support to the office, I mean whether it is cleaning, whether it is the bills, the light bills and so on, whether it's the equipment, the ink that you will call on, the person who wants gas, the person who needs assistance, and you know, therefore, on a monthly basis, it goes beyond that. Yeah, out to all every month. But it is what we do. So I just want to say that the housing minister is something that we look forward to. And I think I speak for all constituencies, not just in St. George North, but we must say St. George North. One of the things that keeps coming at me is since Glenn Clark was here, we had phase 2 at Cottage that was supposed to be done, where it isn't being done. And Minister, you can come back in maybe and speak on that, because although that was allocated for about 100 houses, there are some problems, some challenges there, and I believe I could pause here and let the minister speak to that.
All right, you know, Tony, that's her style, you know, that's her, put you on the spot, but it's a good spot to be on, because the land, basically, when the land was assessed, the topography of the land, it had deep soil, very, very deep soil. And that is why that area is on pause. Because we don't want to go building affordable housing, and you know when you have deep soil what some of the issues are. So we've not closed the door on it. We have to do some more tests there, but we've identified other lands that can even give you more houses than that area, right on the eastern side here, and in Flat Rock and those areas. So it's the topography, and one of the areas that we had challenges with at Hope was the land, the topography. So you have to be careful where you build, because you may come and do a soil test here, and you have 10 feet deep. Then you go over here, and you got 3, 4. So we have to be careful not to put homeowners, and then the cost of the housing will skyrocket. So we are looking, we won't find our flat land where you just scrape off the soil, but we still have to be reasonable with how we build. So that's why that is on pause for the time being. Yes, Kurt.
I was just reading my messages from Tony. There are a few. None of them are nice. Well, nice-ish, but it's always asking about somebody who's asking about housing. And I say, but you know, I tried right under the bus and say I'm not the minister of housing, but I must tell you, we want to build houses, we're trying. We did an ad because, you know, the thing is, you see somebody get evicted in the paper or something, they say, you know, what's Kurt Humphrey doing? And we ran an ad. We even increased the monies. We said we'd pay up to $2,000 a month. We would pay up to $2,000 a month in rent. We will give you 3 months rent up front. I mean, we're trying everything to get people to assist. But when you come and I genuinely do not have houses. We did a full page ad in the newspaper. And I think the challenge is that it wasn't only that people were saying the government doesn't pay, they said so, but then that is a problem that manifested itself between 2008 and 2018. And we've been trying to fix that. But a lot of people also have a thing about what they consider to be welfare clients. So from the time the government steps up and they hear it's coming from us, people they don't want to rent their houses to us to give to people. They say they don't want anybody if the person has children. Then the questions they ask us is like, where this family from? So if they hear you from my constituency, for example, they hear you coming from Baylan or Brittensill or right from the Pine, they don't want to rent the house to you either. So you're dealing with all these stereotypes, people judging people. Even though we've then given the assurance that we will come in, we will try to take care of the house, we clean the house every quarter, and different things to make sure that the house is well maintained. So in our housing stock, even though we've then, if we give you 3 months up front and we're putting in place systems to pay you on time, we still don't have enough houses to be able to put people in. So I'm saying that because I'm just going through these messages from Tony asking me all the time about housing. Kurt, where the house? I asked you about this house for this family. I asked you about this house for this family. And the truth is, even though we're trying, it's difficult to be able to get the housing. So I know it's coming from Tony, it's coming from my constituents too. I'm sure it's coming from Dwight's constituents. I just want to put that out there so people understand. It is not that your MP isn't trying to find you a house, or it is not that she hasn't written the letter, or it's not that she hasn't sent the text message. It is just housing in itself is very, very difficult. We even then came up with this idea of creating a kind of a system, because people ask where you got to go through these systems when you're the government, but then you have to. So create a system where you have like landlords who would be operating on behalf of the government, but not saying it's the government, to be able to help people get houses, which some landlords may not like, but it is perhaps now one of the things that we discussed it, it's something we may have to do. Because we've tried really hard to be able to find houses for persons who are in those situations, and we just haven't been able to find houses. So I take this opportunity really to apologize to you, Tony, because I know you keep asking about housing, and it's not that I am not trying to help you find housing, it is just very, very, very difficult.
But my appeal was to families, and I thank the ministers for accepting the prompt to come back in. But I really appeal to families because to be patient. When you started assisting a family member in 2021 during COVID, and you still find yourself assisting, I could understand the disruption to households and so on. But when that family, and I'm talking about not just an idle threat, just literally being put out, it really places pressure on the entire system. We had a situation, people don't understand how a constituency office runs, you know. We had a situation where a bank officer reached out to the constituency office because they understood an intervention we had made just the week before on another matter, and reached out to us going up to after 6 o'clock in the evening, saying that there's a family with 3 children that they tried everything from their end, but they're being evicted, and they just want to make our office know because they're from our constituency, and well, that officer can't go home and sleep, so they're hoping that our office then can find a solution at that time of evening in a situation where the house stock available for that kind of thing is almost non-existent, and where, as Kurt said, you're reaching out to people in one case for one of the solutions. You're reaching out, you find a place to rent, and then the landlord tell you, man, I can't handle 3 children. Maybe if it was just 2, but not 3. So we have all of these challenges that we're faced with, and that's one issue that I wanted to raise. So housing and the welfare needs, I think the sensitivity there is great. All 3 of my colleagues, Gregory and Kurt in particular, touched on something, and they were emphasizing the importance to this government for having the Barbados Workers Union as an integral part of how the government's work is being rolled out. I don't have a ministry, but my ministry, if I'm playing on the words, what I believe I am called to do, what I believe I was born to do, and believe me, I could have been doing a number of different things like those who preceded me, is to help make a difference in the lives of the many and not the few. That is why I stepped forward in 2014 to be the General Secretary of the Barbados Workers Union, and I fought that. Just like I fought the Prime Minister on coming in this party, I fought that. And I remember Saroy telling me one day when I said, I have to pray about it, I'm still praying about it. He said, well, I hope when you get off your knees, God tell you the same thing he tell me. And that was the end of that. But it is important. When the Barbados Workers Union was formed in 1941, 3 years after the Barbados Progressive League, it was formed because our leader in common, the Right Excellent Grantley Adams, recognized that he had gone as far as he could trying to fight for underprivileged working class people through one stream. And he needed a party that can focus on the political element, and he needed an arm that can focus on the economic element. So the Barbados Workers Union was formed for the latter. And it made good sense to ensure that the two don't go their separate roads. But the only way that the political would achieve the objectives that it sets out for itself is if it was working in tandem with the economic arm. I don't stand here in any way ashamed or timid about the commitment that I have made to the people of Barbados. Because while you, the people of St. George North, have made it possible, the people of Barbados, which is your friends and your families and other constituencies, are the beneficiaries. Because who are the people of Barbados? Who are workers? People of Barbados, and who get impacted one way or the next, whether good happens to them or bad happens to them? Their families. So when we speak about working people and their families, in essence, we're speaking about an entire country. And that's why in my speeches very often you won't hear me making political knots. I don't come out shelling blows left, right, and center like my other colleagues, because I'm very conscious that I am representing you whether you're black, white, red, or orange, straight, gay, male, female, other, it. I am representing you whether you are rich or poor. My responsibility lies always in the center for working people and their families. But when I have to call a spade, I have to do so. Because I also remembered, Gregory, like you, those incidents you spoke about, and I was commenting to Kurt with the IDC. I remember joining my colleague across the pond at the time, the NUPW, in the fight for the IDC workers because they were the major representative there. And I will recall, and I promised my colleagues the clip, the Prime Minister at the time comparing me to a rapist, you know, suggesting that that was the behavior that I was demonstrating as a young, I remember it was accompanied by a saying by new wine and old wine skin. The only thing that happened, it can burst. Rather than trying to make a wrong situation right, where you realize that you had erred. And that's why I'm so proud of this party that I'm a part of, because even when mistakes are made, there is always an effort to undo the wrong, right the wrong, where you recognize that a wrong has been made. A party that is not ashamed to raise its hand and say, we did wrong, and we can fix it, and we can try to do better the next time. So I don't stand here because I will say to workers and working families of Barbados that everything is going right, and that I am proud and satisfied with everything that is being done. But what I am proud of is the commitment that has been made and the commitment that continues to be made to make sure that we do better each time. And so to the constituents of St. George North, this meeting was not intended to be one where we roll out our record so that we talk about the sweet roads that Dwight and talk about the road coming from Bridge Scott, the roads coming all the way from Darrell side, they're feeling bad when they do. Yeah, when they do the road at first and stop just past the roundabout there by Darrell side, they're feeling kind of bad. But now when they could drive from Bourne's Village and come up to Market Hill and the junction by Groves, I am grateful. But like my name suggests, I want more. I want to see that now going into Sweet Bottom, Sweet Vale, right? And we know that that is coming. We know that that is coming because that has been the commitment. And the people of Sweet Vale, they're hotting up my phone. Minister Bradshaw, I hope you are hearing. Hotting up my phone, want to know how comes Market Hill Road getting fixed. And they talk about Sweet Vale before they said Sweet Vale and getting fixed. But it's a different program. Because there are programs with mill and pave where you could do it easy. And those where if it involves services and so on being put in, That is a lot more work to come. And this one, the one in Sweetville, I just want you to remember, and our party leader is always saying that repetition is often necessary. That was a commitment made under a CAFLON, a totally different program, since May 2022. That commitment was made to the people of Sweetville. And so, like every other promise made and kept that you have observed, I have every confidence that that road is coming soon, because not only the people of St. George will benefit from that, but the arteries that use, the other constituencies that use that artery, namely St. Joseph through Clearberry and St. John as well, I know that we are all eagerly looking forward to it. I look forward to the day where I could drive to my mother's house and don't feel a bump in the road. I'm getting it right now up to Groves, but I am looking forward eagerly to seeing it right through to Edgecliff. This is a government that is doing things, and when I see people from the constituency, the biggest complaint I get, and I'm guilty of, so I raise my hand up, is, well, we ain't seeing you. And some people tell you, last time I see you was the election. I see you since election. Or, where there's the MP, why not seeing who he is? I see you up on TV. So you get those kinds of comments coming. And I'm not belittling it in any means, because it's important in the society, in our 166 square miles, for people to see and to feel the people who are serving them. And all my colleagues, I am sure that most of us find ourselves in the same predicament. You're out there, you're meeting with people, but then there are other people who are not seeing you. So they're not seeing you and they feel that they're not feeling you. And my commitment to you is that we're going to do better at that. And why I spoke to Paul being there, because although I don't have a ministry, every single thing that goes on in this government, the input of labor is required. And even when it comes to the amalgamating all of the social departments and the social services in Barbados, that can't happen without the input and involvement of labor. And obviously, if I am on the inside, I am trying to ensure that I do as much as possible to make sure that when it's rolled out, the fallout from whatever happens is minimal, if at all. And these things take up a lot of time, but I'm glad to have Paul, who is well enough known, a St. George man himself, and who is on the beat. From the time anything drops, he's on the ball, trying to fix it, ensuring that I only have to go and step in where it definitely requires. You're talking about the messages that you get from me, is when Paul is up and down and in front of the welfare officer's face, not getting the response, when he is driving around looking for solutions to help your ministry, to make sure that we don't have to rely on you to tell us what's happening, but we can bring the solution in part, only hoping that the rubber stamp of approval goes on it. So we continue to work, we continue not to be perfect, but we continue to try our best to get there, recognizing a mantra that is a personal one for me: only the best is good enough. And when do you know that you've done your best? It's not when people say you have, but when you know within yourself that you've done everything within your power to make a situation better. And it's that saying as well, when you have done your best, angels can do no more. So St. George North, God bless you. Thank you to each of my colleagues, Senator Nichols, the Honorable Kurt Humphrey, the Honorable Dwight Sutherland, my President Roger, because I spoke about Paul. Roger is up and down. He is my OCD person, making sure that everything always is in line for this constituency, bringing issues. And as a branch, as an executive, as a government, in power in this country, in leadership in this country, in service to this country. On everyone's behalf, I thank you all for coming. I thank the technical team who were here on hand from early to ensure the streaming is done. I say a special thank you to the principal of the school as well, who facilitated our participation here this evening. I thank our faithful supporters who, although coming from the other side of St. George North, made sure that they came to Cuthbert Moore School this evening to support their party and let the people of St. Helens, Applewaits, Bournes Village, and Roach Village, Market Hill, everybody understand that we have not forgotten you. You are a part of us, and we are bringing meetings to you as well. I want to thank my very able PRO, Shane Archer, for being co-moderator this evening, along with the ever-energetic and ever-ready Jessica Odell, who has messaged me all sorts of times in the night with issues and so on. So what we gonna do? And I got some work for her. So I'm very glad that at her very right age, she's still ready to work with us. So I just want to say thank you to everybody. I believe that there's some people who are camera shy and who may have some comments for the ministers. And if you see them turning so, just run behind them and stay them out a bit before they leave, because I guarantee you that the answer that they can give you relative to their ministry will be more accurate than the one that I will try to deliver on their behalf on Thursday nights. So thank you and God bless.
Mr. President, you have.
Before we get to Manley, we are going to have the treasurer, Fabian Gooden, is going to go around and collect some funds for the branch this evening.
Or MP.